All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Skills-Based Health on Demand, brought to you by DESE, Missouri Healthy Schools, and MOSHAPE. We are happy to bring another session in our series on the National Health Standards. Today we'll be digging into Standard 5, which is decision making. And I am Kim Goforth. I am the Health and PE Coordinator up in the Columbia Public Schools. And I am here with my best bud, Brad. Hi, Brad.
Hello, Kim. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Brad Brummel, and I am the Health and PE Coordinator for Springfield Public Schools.
Great. Good to see you, Brad. Let's dig in to our objectives for our session today, and we will be digging into Standard 5 of decision making. We're going to look at the components of Standard 5, and then we're going to dig further into the performance indicators in this standard and really focus on what mastery looks like. So what will your students show you about Standard 5 and these performance indicators? And then we're going to take a bulk of our time and talk about how to plan your instruction and give students practice opportunities that can show this mastery for Standard 5. So we'll spend quite a bit of our time today on instruction and practice, and that is what we hope you take away from today's session. To help you with our session today, we have prepared a training guide for you to use, and you can access this training guide in the description of the YouTube video. There is a link there that you can either download and use the fillable boxes, or if you are a paper copy user like Brad and I, then you can print that PDF and you can write on that. So choose your learning style and what you need there, but the training guide will help walk us through our Standard 5 time together today. Brad, let's get in and look at Standard 5.
Let's do it, Kim. Standard 5, decision making. Students will demonstrate the ability to use decision-making skills to, most importantly, enhance their health. And so we want students to be able to identify, implement, and sustain health-enhancing behaviors. And so this decision-making comes in big. It enables our students to collaborate with others as well to make these health-enhancing behaviors. It's not only just you make a good choice. It enables them to work with others and collaborate with others to be able to make those health-enhancing behaviors. So within each of our skills, we have some goals. And so goal number 1 of decision making is to be able to develop an awareness of when. I think the big part is when a thoughtful decision-making process is necessary, because it's important for students to know that not every decision needs to go through a thoughtful decision-making process and using a step-by-step model process. And so we need to know when we need to use this thoughtful process. And so you can see some examples of when a student might need it, but example 3 would probably work great for our secondary health students. And what do I do if someone offers me alcohol? That would be an example of when a thoughtful decision-making process is probably necessary. Goal 2 of our decision-making skill is for students to be able to make, and then keyword here, follow through on decisions related to their personal health. So a lot of times we can identify the healthy choice that we need to make, but a lot of times the follow through is the part that sometimes we miss. Like, I know I need to go for a run when I get home from my office job today, but I have to be able to follow through on that healthy choice. And so again, here we've got some great examples. And to stick with number 3, after thinking about the consequences of underage drinking, I will tell my friend no. I will tell them why it is important to me to not drink, and that why is going to help with that follow through. And then goal 3. So now we're determining when help and assistance is needed, because although we would love for us to be able to make these decisions on our own all the time, it's just not practical. And so a lot of these thoughtful decisions will need collaboration and assistance from trusted adults or people that we're close to. And so you can see here, example 3 again, my friends are really pressuring me to drink. I'm going to ask my big sister what I should do. And so you can see in this example, the student has been enabled to collaborate with a big sister to kind of help her with the follow through part. And so those are the 3 goals.
Wonderful.
With decision making.
Awesome. Brad, great breakdown of those goals. Decision making is kind of a big beast. And I read somewhere, I probably get this number wrong, don't quote me on this, anyone, but we make, thousands of decisions a day, just little things, what to put on, to walk across the parking lot, that kind of thing. So decision making is like an ongoing thing. And like Brad said, do we need to take time to make this huge decision making process to cross the street at a certain time? No, you either go or you don't, based on the traffic in the moment. But I think that when we relate it to health behaviors and we focus on our overall goals of health education and really fine tune to health, everything can be related to our health. Walking across the street at a bad time can definitely affect our health. Playing Frogger is not healthy. And so if we look at our goals here of health education and maintaining healthy behaviors, delaying onset of some unhealthy or risky behaviors, I think that students engaging in this particular standard, that they'll have the ability to connect some of these outside decision-making ideas that come at them, that they can really assess how that's going to impact my health. And so not just of my own health, but everyone around me. And that's the health literacy piece that we talk about, becoming health literate for myself and others. And so I think that it just certainly revolves around making good, healthy decisions, but allowing students those skills to connect how their decisions impact their health. I think that is just the paramount of what I see out of the goals of health education and making that connection. So we challenge you right now in your training guide on page 1, this opening activity. What are some connections that you make to those overall goals of health education and standard 5? So how does decision making really impact your overall health education goals? Why is it so important? So take a reflective minute on page 1 and answer standard 5 question. You can pause the video if you need to.
And Kim, I think as we move into this vertical progression here, we hear in schools all the time, and students hear it more than we do, make a good choice. Make a good choice, make a good choice. What a great opportunity for us as health educators to become the person that is helping our students learn the skill to make that choice. Because as teachers, that we tell our students often to make a good choice, but we don't take the time to teach them what it looks like to actually make the choice and empower them to make those choices. So
right. That's huge. Yeah.
Great opportunity. So as we look at it from a pre-K through graduation progression here, for our primary elementary students, we're wanting them to determine whether they can make the decision themselves or not. Do they need help with this decision, or can I make this decision myself? And that's a huge step for a pre-K through second grade student. I have a kindergartner at home, and this is big because they don't know with some simple things. They think that they can go get the snack on the top shelf of the cabinet all by themselves because they've heard you preach, be independent. And so they need help being able to determine, is this a decision I can make by myself, or do I need help? And as we progress to upper elementary, we're now starting to introduce the steps of a thoughtful decision-making process. So early elementary, they learn when they need help. And then upper elementary, they're learning the steps so that they can make these thoughtful decisions more independently. And they're learning a successful strategy to do that in a step-by-step way. And then as we move into secondary health education at the middle school level, we're actually applying these steps that they learned in upper elementary. This is a great vertical progression. And then they're following through on decisions to promote their personal health. And then in high school, we're using, I love the variety of strategies, because we're not going to start off just throwing a ton of different strategies at them. In middle school, where they're typically going to learn, they're going to get good at 1 or 2 strategies. And then in high school, we're really pushing our students to learn a variety of strategies that they can prioritize to make these healthy decisions. And they can do this independently and collaboratively. So that's what the vertical progression looks like. As we kind of dive a little deeper into the performance indicators, I just kind of wanted to highlight a couple of the verbs and how they differ from middle school to high school. And the first thing I'd like to notice is on 5.8.1, you can notice the verb identify. And then on the third indicator, you can see distinguish. And then on indicator 6, you can see choose. And so those are the 3 verbs I want to highlight. And then when we move to high school, we go to examine, justify, and defend. And so you can see the level of skill. We're expecting a much higher usage and higher order of thinking for our high school student compared to the middle school student. Very similar concept or content and what they're doing, but the level of what they're doing it, examine, justify, and defend, is a much different at the high school level.
Right. A little bit deeper cognitive. Yeah. And Brad, we've talked about this before, but you have to be careful with justifying and defending poor decisions that were made. And so kind of coaching students through that process too. Are we overly defending a poor behavior, and always coming back to the healthy behavior that is the desired outcome? So big verbs. So thanks for sharing those, Brad. So we challenge you here to take a minute on your training guide on page 2 to look at some performance indicators for Standard 5. Think about your grade span, read through those performance indicators, and really be thoughtful about selecting one of them to kind of process through during our training together. Think about your current students, maybe your district, your community. What performance indicator do you want to focus on for our training together as we walk through some examples? And then question 3 talks about, why did you select that? So give it some thought and be reflective here on your training guide on page 2. You can pause the video if you need to do that, but take some reflection time right now for performance indicators. All right, we're going to start talking about backwards design, and it's one of Brad and I's favorite discussions because we're curriculum nerds. And so we always start with the end in mind, and our end in mind, what we want kids to cross over that finish line is to achieve those goals of health education. We want them to be health literate for themselves and for others. And so if we cross backwards the finish line, we focus on the standards. What are we looking at here? And this training series are the national health standards. We have dug into some of the performance indicators for those. And now we're going to back up one level and start with that assessment piece. Start with the mastery in mind. What do you want your students showing you about Standard 5? And so Brad's going to walk us through some of the mastery conversation for Standard 5.
Yeah, I wanted just to provide one example for mastery for middle school. So you can see I've got 3 middle school performance indicators here, and I'm going to highlight 5.8.1 because I'm going to show some examples of instruction and practice opportunities for this performance indicator later. So you can see that we have some student-friendly language of what it would look like for a student to master performance indicator 1 here. So our performance indicator reads, identify circumstances that can help or hinder healthy decision making. But in a student-friendly mastery statement, we're saying that I can identify when it is easy or hard to follow through on healthy decisions, and I can make a plan for when a healthy decision is difficult. So breaking it down like this not only helps us communicate to students what we're trying to master and what we're trying to learn, but it also helps guide my creation of rubrics, my planning, my instruction, and my practice opportunities. So it's important to take this step because it's going to help me as an instructor to be able to identify when my students have mastered this skill or when I need to differentiate instruction or alter my instruction as well. So important step. And then this is an example assessment tool. These are provided in the RMC Health Skill Guides. This example is talking about giving students a menu of choices that students make on a daily basis, just in their everyday life, and letting the students pick one, and then letting them use the decision step-by-step model that we give them to go through and go through this decision-making model in kind of a scenario-based situation and let them use the model through this decision that they've picked. And providing them choice is going to increase the engagement and make it hopefully easy to relate to.
Perfect. Those are great examples, Brad. And I like that the assessment tool speaks to the verb level that you talked about in the performance indicators. I think that's awesome. We're going to give you a chance now to take that performance indicator that you have selected for your district, for your students, for your community, and look at the to-dos. Look at that student-friendly language on what your students are going to show you for mastery for that particular performance indicator. And so if you want to think about it in the lens of asking yourself, what am I looking for? What do I want them to show me? So have some time here to reflect on page 2 of your training guide and identify what to-dos you would like to see your students do for your indicator. So again, we're going to review some of our backwards design and take you to the next step, which is the instructional planning and practice opportunities for students. So we've worked our way past assessments now, and this is the grit and the heart of what teachers do. So we spend our time looking at my instructional plan. How am I going to get this information to my students so they are successful on their assessment? And so we need to couple that with practice opportunities. And so those two things need to marry in our planning to get us to show mastery. And so Brad's going to walk us through both the instructional planning as well as ideas for providing students practice of skill 5.
Yeah, so anytime we're, as a teacher or coach, trying to help a student or athlete learn a skill, we're going to break it down. That's what we're really good at. And so that's no different with a health skill. And so we're not going to just expect them, like we talked about earlier, to be able to learn how to make that decision. We need to break the decision down. And so at the middle school level, this is what that step-by-step process looks like. And so step 1 is determining the importance of a health decision. And this is the only step that's different for high school. So I'll say that now as you're kind of going through these. So step 1 is determining how important is this decision. And that helps us decide if we can do it by ourselves, if we need help, or maybe I don't even need a thoughtful process. I'm just going to move forward with my gut reaction. But that's step 1 at the middle school level. And then we're going to use we're going to prioritize, pick a strategy, make that decision. We're going to follow through on the decision. And then most importantly, we're going to reflect so that we can learn from that decision. If we don't take the time to reflect, we're really missing out on a powerful opportunity. And so as we move to high school, like I mentioned, the only difference is step 1 is we're expecting that to become pretty natural for a high school student to know if it's an important decision or if it's something that they need help with. So now we're trying to emphasize to high school students that let's pause and think, because as high school students become maybe more knowledgeable, maybe know-it-alls, they think they can just go with that, skip straight to step 3. And sometimes we need to pause and think. Just pause and think. And I think that's an important step to highlight. Probably not a bad step for middle school students or adults either. But this is the only step that's different. And then you'll see the same steps 2 through 5 for grades 9 through 12. So I wanted to highlight just a couple important terms that I think are helpful, not only for you as a teacher, but for as a student. To kind of master this skill. And so every day, I think it's important that students know that these are decisions that don't have long-lasting impacts on one's life and health. These are just everyday decisions that I think it's important for us to define every day. And so next would be impulsive. These are decisions that are made without thinking, though the impacts of the decision, they could have a negative consequence, especially in a stressful situation. And so don't just assume that our students know what an impulsive decision is. Let's take the time to really help them understand what that is. A responsible decision. Okay, let's break down what a responsible decision looks like, and we're probably going to do that by modeling the decision making. But these are decisions that are made with intent. We've considered the impact. We've looked at alternative decisions, and we're also looking at the impact of what it has on people around us. So I think that and then these last 3 here, what a collaborative decision is. So a decision that makes us want to work with others or requires us to work with others. Prioritization, a process to review options in order to determine which is best. And then follow through, we've talked on that a lot. the ability to uphold decisions, even in difficult situations. If I bring up follow through in Springfield in a decision-making model, they're going to go straight to basketball. They're going to go straight to beef. They're going to go straight to the best shooters in Springfield. So take the time to help them understand what follow through means in a decision-making process.
That's good stuff, Brad. Thank you. I love the vocab that you focused on there. I think we take for granted sometimes that kids know what the word impulsive means, and talking that through, I think, is critical, especially for this particular standard. So thank you. Some teaching tips as we think about standard 5 and decision making. I think that, and Brad, I'm going to pick on you here for a minute because you said about going for a run later. So I'm going to follow through. I think that because you communicated that with me and our viewers today, I think that giving students an opportunity to communicate the decision that they did make is paramount. You kind of put that out there for everybody to hear, and then maybe it holds you a little bit more accountable for that follow through. And so providing students with that communication piece, I think, is a great tip that teachers can start to implement as well. So I'll text you later tonight and make sure you went for your run because you put it out there. So
I did. It's out there.
That's right. So the other teaching tip that I think is important is to always connect those things to real life, like we just did there for Brad. That spoke dearly to what he needed to do for his life, and making it very real to students will be another heavy hitter that will help them achieve mastery a lot more quickly. So some teaching tips for standard 5 there.
Thank you, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk through some examples of what maybe some instruction would look like and some practice opportunities would look like. And again, I mentioned earlier that I'm going to try to highlight 5.8.1. So we're identifying circumstances that can help or hinder that healthy decision-making process. You can see some sub-skills that are associated with the step 4 follow-through. So Kim just mentioned it. Perfect segue. Communicating our decisions, being able to identify when it's easy or hard to follow through, and then we want our students to be able to make a plan, especially when they know a decision is going to be difficult. So I love the guiding questions that are here. I love the vocabulary. All great, helpful resources provided by the skill guides at RMC. So what we're going to do next is we're going to, if I'm in the classroom and I'm wanting my students to practice these opportunities, I'm going to give them an opportunity, hopefully regularly in my class, to journal. But this is a great one. What decisions have you made lately? Let them journal about it. Let them kind of have that processing opportunity through reflection and through pen and paper. But giving them the opportunity to kind of get those down, and then you as a teacher get the opportunity to review those and give them feedback on those, and maybe praise a student for a great healthy decision that you had no idea that they were already making, but they were able to communicate through a journal. And then anytime we can do some scenarios where we're giving the students an opportunity to practice that decision-making model, that's obviously going to help them be successful when they're in real life making that decision. And what's really helpful in these scenario type situations is if we can give them a model. And so obviously first I would want to break this model down for them and teach them the different steps and model that as a class. But then we're going to use some scenarios and give them the opportunity, like that assessment tool that we went over earlier. Let them choose a decision-making opportunity and use this model to go through and kind of identify what that would look like. And so this could be used with almost any content you decide you're teaching at that time of the year, whether it's substance abuse, sexual health, mental health. Give them a variety of topics within that content that you're teaching, or if you're not in a specific content unit, give them a bigger variety and provide that student choice. But this is and this, you're going to notice that this decision-making model closely resembles that step-by-step process that we went through earlier. And so that's on purpose. And this is just a helpful model for students when they're going through that process. And then one practice opportunity that I'm excited about offering for Springfield next year is this opportunity to do a hands-on activity to really put ourselves in a situation of decision making. And so one idea is to provide students opportunity to play the game of Jenga. And so we're providing Jenga games for our middle school health classrooms next year. And in a small group, students will play Jenga and they will work on those steps of pausing and thinking. Okay, so if you've played Jenga, there's always that you're not going to just pull a block out without pausing and thinking of which one's best. And so then you've made your decision and you start to push that block through, and sometimes you get nervous and you have to follow through. Sometimes you have to follow through and pick that block, even though you're not sure if it's the best choice. And then there's always reflection, right? So if it really wobbled, you're probably not going to choose a similar or like situation again. But what I really like about this activity is we're going to allow the students to play a traditional game. We're going to have some group discussion afterwards. How could you connect the decisions that you made in Jenga to the model that we've used so far in class, to the different steps that we've talked about? And then we're really going to push the students, and we're going to put them on a time limit. So we're going to make students pick their block within 5 seconds. And so their partner or the person to the right of them is going to count down from 5, and they have to pick the block within that time limit, or they're out of the game. So now we're putting a time limit, and so now students at the end of this round are going to reflect about what does time do to the decision-making process, because that's something that can help or hinder, right? That was back to that performance indicator. And so now students are reflecting on the decision-making process with time involved, because so many of our decisions are related to time. And so we want students to be able to reflect on that. And then the last one, which I think is my favorite. So now we're going to play a third round of Jenga where the person on your left, or if it's just a partner activity, your partner tells you what block to pick. So if me and Kim are playing Jenga, Kim's going to point at a block and without touching the blocks. So she can't feel around and look at the most, but she has to just randomly pick a block, and that's the block I have to pick. And so obviously that's going to be a shorter round of Jenga, but it gives the students an opportunity to reflect on what happens when we allow our friends or our peers to make our decisions for us. And we want our students to own their decisions and not let others own their own health enhancing behaviors. And so that is one example of an engaging practice opportunity. And I hope that students enjoy it as much as I do.
Yeah, Brad, that's an awesome example. And it adds that layer. Each round adds a layer of stress, and you talked about it in the format of time, but I think that could cause a little bit of stress for kids too, which is real. When you have a decision that's under stress, how does that help or hinder? So what a cool example. So great. Now I'm going to have to go buy a bunch of Jenga.
Yeah, you are.
Thank you for that. But anyway, all right, great examples, Brad. Now we're going to give you an opportunity to reflect a little bit on your teaching progression for the performance indicator that you had selected. So we want you to take a minute to look at those steps again, reflect on what practice opportunities you could give your students to help show mastery of that performance indicator. So on page 3 of your training guide, go ahead and have some reflective time there and answer those questions. So Brad's mentioned a few times the RMC Health skill guides. These are fantastic resources, all free to us. This is for a 9-12 grade span, and there we have the step, pause and think, that important one that Brad mentioned. We see the vocabulary there. We see some sub-skills. We see in step 1 some suggested learning activities, and then the little yellow box, it's a little bit light on the slide for me, the language of health literacy. I think, Brad, when you mentioned journaling for students, I think sometimes the language prompts that are listed here in these skill guides could be used for that journaling activity. And then on the right, you'll see a resource bank, and it falls at the bottom of some of these skill guides. Fantastic resources. There are a lot of videos embedded, articles. If you have a building-wide literacy push, you've got articles in there, but a really comprehensive resource bank is listed for each of these learning activities. And so really dip into that and help connect with Standard 5 for decision making. One big teaching tip out of this standard and Brad's mentioned it several times through the steps and through these activities, is that to teach decision making for each of our health topics. And so we have a natural scope and sequence in every district across our state, but it really plays nice with every single one. How do we make decisions every day about our health? And the example here in this teaching tip talks about tobacco, marijuana, vaping, that kind of thing. What are the decisions and the process around that healthy behavior? And you can apply that to every other content area that we address in health. And so we partner this teaching tip with other areas of our content. And so when we look at health behavior outcomes in our HECAT and talk about how can I teach this skill systemically through my scope and sequence, I think if you get to the HECAT resource and the modules, you could make a case for any of the content areas that we have talked about or that we do talk about. And so we challenge you to go to those modules and see where your particular performance indicator would fall in any of these. Brad, you've given several examples there, and so I think we could make a case for all, correct?
Oh, yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah, every day, all day, every day, right? So we
Yep.
challenge you right now to take a minute and think about your content and where you could sprinkle in Standard 5 to have kids show some mastery about decision making and the decision making process. And so we have linked in your training guide on page 3 the HECAT analysis tool for those modules to look at. And so identify what content is going to partner very nice with your scope and sequence flow. So that wraps us up today and looking at Standard 5, and we appreciate you joining us. We did this decision-making session as part of our diving into the national health standards. We've got 7 other videos that really take a deeper look at the other 7. We have some instructional strategy videos. Brad mentioned journaling, and that is a very powerful tool that we will dig a little bit deeper into that video. And then there is a why of skills-based health education session and a making that shift to skills-based health ed. And we hope to see you at some of those very soon. And Brad, thanks for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everybody.